Oh well, summer is here. First days when the temperature reaches 30 degrees, and I'm really not going to talk about it. That would be extremely against everything that I've promised myself to do with this channel and with these recordings. So instead, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing with my writing and the fact that I still have ideas and I'm still able to find new premises for my, stories. I was able to pretty much solve all the most important plot points in what I'm currently working on. And again, it's a project that I have started mostly to fix my horrendous spelling and grammar, and also to finally learn commas because we've never learned them in school. And it seems that generally it's a quite complicated process, and that even the natives are not exactly sure when and where to use them correctly, which is kind of similar to my native language, but I would say that from what I've seen so far, English rules for commas are even more chaotic, and there seem to be more exceptions to rules than the rules themselves. So that's going to be rather challenging, I have to say. And once I'm done writing the skeleton of the story, I have no real process to this. I just one day opened a program and started writing with the sole purpose of creating a story that would be absolutely perfect, with nothing that irritates me in pretty much any story that I've ever read in my life. And so far it's going surprisingly well. Obviously, if anyone else other than me ever read it, I'm pretty sure they would not get past the prologue, but I never really intended for this to be a story that would get out of my computer. So as far as I'm concerned, it's fulfilling its role. And once I'm done with writing the initial draft, I'll have to do at least two, three, maybe more readings to filter out unnecessary dialogue, unnecessary expositions, take care of any plot holes that I may have introduced unknowingly. Because even though I try to keep in mind at least the bare minimum in terms of continuity and the points of progression that the characters went through, I've already mentioned that my memory is not exactly perfect, or maybe it's not exactly a memory problem, but concentration and focus. So I'll have to do some proper cleaning of the story, and I'll have to shake off the influence of what I've been reading for the past few years, which is episodic web novels, and those tend to have an extreme amount of just filler words, sentences, phrases that actually add nothing to the story itself, which is something that I don't want in mine, and I'll have to make sure that I'll be able to spot these in my own writings and actually leave only what I truly believe is important and has a place in what I'm trying to write. Enough about my sorry excuse for a book. And last time we were introduced to some of the characters that are important to Asterix and Obelix Mission Cleopatra, and now Numeromis traveled far to the north in search of a gold druid that his father told him about, completely unprepared for the extreme difference of temperatures between Egypt and the Gaul lands that are currently covered in snow. And there we also get introduced to Asterix, Obelix, and Idefix for the first time, in their encounter with some new transferred Roman soldiers who are in turn introduced to the Gaul strengthening potion and its permanent effect on Obelix, since he fell into the potion when he was a small child and thus he doesn't need to drink it like the rest of the villagers, which causes him great distress because he would like to drink as well, obviously, but the druid Panoramix always forbids him, which is a running gag in the comics and in the movies as well. Once Numeromis meets Asterix and Obelix and asks for the druid, they take him to the village where he attempts to persuade Panoramix to aid him in his plight, the impossible quest of finishing the palace in bare 2 months now, because a month will be spent on the journey there to Gaul and back to Egypt. Numeromis tries to buy the potion, but unfortunately Panoramix refuses, since it's considered a secret that's simply not for sale, and it would be against his druidic ancestors' wishes. Finally, after Numeromis plays a bit on the feelings of the poor druid, and since Asterix and Obelix also join in the persuasion, Panoramix agrees to instead travel with Numeromis under the pretext that he wanted to visit the great library in Alexandria, and of course, Asterix, Obelix, and Idefix can't miss this opportunity to see some new interesting lands and also find some new Romans to fight. Well, Obelix has to smuggle Idefix on the ship, but that's just a small issue, and on their way to Egypt, they meet their old friends, the pirate. The captain has a motivating speech regarding their last encounter with the Gauls, warns his crew to never ever mess with the Gaul ships. Anyone else is their free prey. Well, unfortunately, the Egyptian ship that they have spotted and are ready to board is the one that Numeromis, Asterix, Obelix, Idefix, and Panoramix are traveling on. The Egyptians on board are completely terrified. Meanwhile, Asterix and Obelix are waving at their good old buddies, which does not escape the sights of the lookout, and he warns the captain, which the captain reacts to in a rather surprising way. He takes away an axe of one of his crewmates and actually sinks the ship and laughs at the Gauls in glee as they can only helplessly watch as the ship sinks without them even being able to fight the pirates. After this short intermission, they are finally in Egypt, and Numeromis takes the Gauls to visit the queen and tell her that he enlisted their help in an attempt to actually finish the palace for Caesar. After their conversation, they are finally going to visit the construction site where the palace is being built. Meanwhile, the Gauls are admiring the Queen Cleopatra's nose, which is a again poke at her supposedly extremely beautiful nose that was mentioned in many historical texts. Meanwhile, Numeromis is pointing out the fact that he'll end up eaten by the crocodiles, while the Gauls have time to admire Cleopatra's nose. Although Asterix wasn't that interested in the queen herself, but in one of her consorts instead, which will play a smaller role in the future of this movie. And on the construction side, the Gauls experience some cultural differences between them and the Egyptians, like a tradition when the whipper becomes the whip and the whip becomes the whipper after a signal is given. Then they meet Otis, whose personality trait is that he is rather overtly philosophical, and then they encounter the first problem, a slave revolt instigated by the rival architect Amon, who persuades the workers that what they are doing is simply unacceptable and that they should rebel against the architect Numeromis. He obviously wants him to fail and then try and finish the palace himself, and thus he begins his subterfuge, which will continue through the entire movie. When the rebelling workforce meets Numeromis, they have some insane demands, like decreasing the amount of hours they work in 2 days by a single hour from 36 to 35, and a decrease of the number of whiplashes they receive by at least 50%, since some of the workers are experiencing headaches from the noise. I should probably stress out the fact that this is a comedy, and even something like this is played for laughs because it is meant to be comedic. I guess I have to say this just in case. And even Numeramis's response is meant for laughs. He is unhappy with their demands because they would mean that the palace wouldn't be finished in time and then he would end up fed to crocodiles. But Panoramix stops him and says that the spokesperson of the rebels, Itineraries, is correct in her demands and that he'll solve it by himself, which is why he even traveled to Egypt in the first place. The Gauls then give a demonstration of the prowess the strengthening potion gives them, which obviously looks like a miracle to all the Egyptians. And this is a first dancing and singing event in this movie when all the powered up workers are moving large blocks of stone with extreme ease to the tunes of I Got You, I Feel Good song. Meanwhile, poor Obelix is again denied the access to the potion, even though he attempts to disguise himself as one of the workers by borrowing a wig they use. Unfortunately for him, Panoramix sees through his disguise and again refuses to give Obelix the potion. This entire scene is being observed by Amopophis himself, using again as a joke binoculars formed by using his own hands. He spots Valdo, an Egyptian dressed in the colorful outfit Valdo has. Just a small Easter egg, and then he also notices the Gauls. And that's where I'll end it for today. And next time I'm going to continue with Asterix and Obelix, Mission Cleopatra.